Imagine waking up on the 30th of April, 1975, knowing the government you trusted has fallen and borders are about to slam shut. That was the reality in Saigon, when the city fell to North Vietnamese forces and the Vietnam War officially ended. The war didn't end for millions of people when the last shots were fired. It began a mass displacement crisis that forced families into one brutal choice: stay under a hostile regime or risk escape. In the 2 decades that followed, an estimated 800,000 Vietnamese boat people fled by sea, part of roughly 2 million South Vietnamese refugees who sought asylum across Southeast Asia and beyond, often after government controls blocked legal immigration paths. This pattern repeats in crises across history. Civilians don't flee because food runs low, they flee when borders close and states retract protection. Jewish refugees after the Nazi annexations of the 1930s desperately sought exit routes as countries hardened entry policies, and when those gates closed, lives were lost. The decisive moment in any collapse isn't surviving chaos at home, it's successfully crossing a boundary that institutions still recognize as legitimate. When that boundary vanishes, so does the chance to preserve life and accumulated security. Imagine opening your banking app during a national emergency and seeing $20,000 still sitting there, then walking to an ATM and finding it empty. This is not a hypothetical. On the 24th of February, 2022, as Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, Ukrainian banks suspended electronic transfers, imposed withdrawal limits, and shut branches within hours. On paper, millions were solvent. In practice, they were cashless. The same pattern appeared earlier in Cyprus in March 2013, when bank deposits above 100,000 euros were frozen and partially confiscated overnight to recapitalize failing banks. In Argentina, 2001, depositors were locked out of their accounts under the Corralito policy for months. In Venezuela, as inflation surged past 0% in 2017, savings held in bolivars became functionally worthless, while bank controls made access increasingly arbitrary. The common thread is simple: paper assets only function when institutions honor them. Bank balances, certificates of deposit, and legal claims require state enforcement, regulatory stability, and political continuity. When those same institutions feel threatened, they don't protect depositors, they protect themselves. Accounts are frozen, documents lose credibility, and ownership records can even identify you as a target. The moment the state becomes your adversary, institution-dependent wealth flips from protection to liability. Before we analyze why gold behaves differently in collapse, welcome to GE Economy, where we deliver in-depth analysis of economics, finance, and market cycles. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to hit like to support the channel and subscribe to receive more insights and long-form value in future episodes. Once you accept that institution-dependent assets fail precisely when institutions turn hostile, the next question becomes unavoidable. What actually works when escape, not survival in place, is the objective? History gives a clear answer, and it is often misunderstood. Gold is not designed to help you live through a collapse day by day. It is designed to help you leave one. Gold performs poorly as an everyday medium during crisis. You cannot efficiently buy bread with it. You cannot easily price small transactions or make change at checkpoints. During hyperinflationary episodes such as Weimar Germany in 1923 or Venezuela after 2016, daily commerce quickly shifts to barter, cigarettes, or foreign cash. Gold is simply too dense in value for routine spending. That limitation, however, is precisely what makes it decisive at the moment that matters most. Gold's strength appears at the exit point. A single ounce of gold, worth roughly $4,300 in 2025, concentrates years of labor into 31 grams, small enough to conceal, transport, and protect. Vietnamese refugees in the late 1970s flattened gold into thin sheets to cross borders. Jewish refugees in 1938 carried coins and diamonds when bank accounts became death traps. Syrian families in 2015 needed 1,000 euros per person to cross from Turkey to Greece. Those who could convert savings into portable, non-institutional value moved. Those who could not stayed behind. Gold enables 3 critical functions simultaneously. It preserves large value in minimal volume. It is universally accepted for bribery and passage when authority collapses, and it allows survivors to rebuild once safety is reached. This is the central insight history keeps repeating. Gold is not for during collapse, it is for the other side of collapse. If gold's purpose is to carry value across the moment of exit, the next question is obvious. Why does it still work when everything else stops working? The answer is mechanical, not emotional. Gold and diamonds do not rely on systems that collapse under stress. They function in the absence of power, law, and trust. When states fail, infrastructure fails with them. Internet access disappears. Electricity becomes intermittent. Banks close. Legal protections dissolve overnight. In Ukraine in February 2022, electronic transfers were suspended within hours. In Lebanon after 2019, capital controls made bank balances unreachable despite still existing on paper. Digital assets, contracts, and accounts all require continuous institutional operation. Gold requires none of it. It does not need verification, connectivity, or permission. Its value rests on three properties that do not change during political collapse. First, physical reality. Gold is dense, durable, and cannot be erased or frozen. Second, scarcity. It cannot be printed, duplicated, or created by decree. Global mine supply grows roughly 1–2% per year, regardless of politics. Third, global convertibility. Gold trades in virtually every country, formally or informally, at prices anchored to international markets. This is why acceptance is instinctive. A border guard does not need a terminal, an exchange rate screen, or legal clarity. He understands immediately that gold can be converted into cash, goods, or safety anywhere, even after the regime he serves collapses. Paper promises expire with the state that issues them. Gold outlives regimes. That is why, across centuries of collapse, the same assets keep reappearing in survivor accounts. When authority disintegrates, recognition of value becomes primal. And few things are recognized more universally than gold and diamonds in a world where trust has vanished. Once you understand why gold is accepted universally, the next layer becomes critical. Form matters more than total weight. In real escape scenarios, carrying gold incorrectly can be as dangerous as carrying none at all. History consistently shows that large, consolidated holdings create friction at the worst possible moment. A standard 1-ounce gold bar, worth roughly $4,300 in 2025, is highly recognizable. Its size and markings make it easy to identify during searches, increasing the probability of confiscation. More importantly, it is indivisible in practice. If passage costs $300, $500, offering a full ounce forces negotiation, invites suspicion, and almost guarantees overpayment. There is no reliable way to make change at a checkpoint or border crossing. Large bars concentrate risk. If discovered, the loss is total. Fragmented gold solves this problem. 1 gram, 5 gram, and 10 gram bars provide flexibility and control. A 1 gram bar, worth roughly $130, $140, matches the scale of real-world transactions, such as fuel, guides, or short crossings. Smaller denominations allow value to be deployed gradually, reduce catastrophic loss if one piece is seized, and support movement across multiple stages of escape. Vietnamese refugees in the late 1970s understood this intuitively, flattening and dividing gold to preserve optionality. Survival is not about carrying the most gold. It is about carrying the correct denomination of value. Those who make it out do not optimize for wealth, they optimize for usability under pressure. After form and portability, the final comparison is unavoidable. Why digital assets break down when reality stops cooperating. Bitcoin is often presented as collapse-proof money, but history shows it only functions when conditions remain unusually intact. Specifically, Bitcoin requires electricity, internet access, and counterparties who understand and trust the technology. Remove any one of those, and its usefulness collapses. This was visible in Ukraine in February 2022. Banks froze transfers within hours, ATMs emptied, and millions fled west. One widely cited case involved a refugee who escaped with Bitcoin stored on a USB drive and a handwritten seed phrase. He succeeded, but only partially. To survive in Poland, he immediately sold portions of his Bitcoin for cash through personal contacts, ultimately converting it into roughly $600 worth of zloty. Bitcoin did not function as money, it functioned as a bridge to money. The limitation is structural. Verifying Bitcoin ownership requires internet access to interact with the blockchain. Converting it into spendable resources requires exchanges, liquidity, compliance checks, and local buyers. In fragile states, or at borders, none of this is guaranteed. A border guard cannot eat a private key, cannot verify a transaction, and cannot wait for network confirmation. Even in the most favorable real-world cases, digital assets revert to what they truly are in crisis: intermediate instruments, not final settlement. Survivors do not hold Bitcoin once they reach safety. They liquidate it as fast as possible into cash or tangible assets. Gold skips that entire dependency chain. When conditions are imperfect, and they always are, simplicity wins. Reaching a safe country does not end the risk, it changes its form. Once the border is crossed, legal exposure replaces physical danger, and this is where many otherwise sound escape strategies fail. Gold creates fewer problems than cash, but it does not eliminate them. Under the U.S. Bank Secrecy Act, travelers must declare more than $10,000 in cash or monetary instruments when entering or leaving the country. Physical gold, including bullion and bars, is not legally classified as currency, so carrying $50,000 worth of gold does not trigger that specific reporting threshold. This is often misunderstood as a loophole. It is not. Gold is still subject to customs declaration requirements, and failure to declare accurately can result in full seizure under civil asset forfeiture laws. The mechanics are unforgiving. When customs seizes undeclared assets, authorities issue a notice of seizure and give roughly 30 days to contest it. For refugees arriving without stable housing, legal counsel, or complete documentation, responding effectively is extremely difficult. The burden of proof falls on the holder to demonstrate legitimate origin. For someone who accumulated gold gradually over decades, often outside formal invoice systems, this can be nearly impossible. The rational strategy is counterintuitive but consistent with historical outcomes. Either declare holdings fully upon entry, accept questioning and delays, and preserve legal standing, or carry only minimal amounts initially and import additional assets later through regulated, documented channels once residency and legal support are established. Concealment destroys credibility. Transparency creates friction, but friction is survivable. Legal seizure is not. When the historical record is stripped of emotion and examined mechanically, what remains is not ideology or prediction, but procedure. Survivors did not rely on luck. They followed an exit protocol refined across decades of collapse. First, accumulation happens early and gradually. Vietnamese families in the 1960s and early 1970s did not rush to buy gold in April 1975. Small, continuous purchases of fractional gold, 1 gram, 5 grams, 10 grams, reduce visibility, avoid price spikes, and leave no obvious institutional trail. Second, distribution is critical. Carrying all value in one location guarantees catastrophic loss if discovered. Survivors dispersed assets across clothing, linings, belts, and personal items so that no single search ended the attempt. Third, loss must be assumed, not avoided. Historical outcomes show that 10–30% loss through bribes, theft, forced discounts, or seizures is normal. Those who succeeded accumulated more than they expected to keep. Fourth, arrival demands transparency. Declaring assets at the destination border creates delay and scrutiny, but it preserves legal standing. Attempted concealment almost always ends in forfeiture. Finally, the most important correction. This is not an investment strategy. Gold in this context is insurance, not speculation. It does not exist to generate returns, beat inflation, or outperform markets. It exists to transfer accumulated labor across a regime change intact. You hope never to use it, but history is clear. Those who had an exit protocol survived. Those who trusted systems did not. When we step back and look across history, the pattern isn't random, it is stunningly consistent. After the 30th of April 1975, the fall of Saigon triggered one of the largest movements of humans in the 20th century. Between 1975 and 1995, nearly 800,000 Vietnamese boat people escaped across the South China Sea in dangerous small craft, and many more were resettled in Western countries amid broader Indo-Chinese migration flows that involved millions of displaced persons. In Europe in 2015, more than 1.3 million people, primarily from Syria, along with others from Afghanistan and Iraq, reached EU shores by sea to seek asylum, the highest annual total since World War II. As of 2024-25, the conflict in Ukraine contributed to another massive displacement. Millions of Ukrainians have crossed borders seeking protection, making Ukraine one of the largest sources of refugees in the world. Even the historic refugee movements after World War II, such as the Sheret HaPlata, over 250,000 Jewish Holocaust survivors in displaced persons camps between 1945 1951 underline a recurring truth. When political power collapses or turns hostile, people flee en masse. These events span continents and eras, but they share the same basic dynamic. States lose legitimacy, borders become lethal, and individuals must carry what they can to survive and rebuild. This is not abstract theory, it is the law of displacement in modern history. Share your perspective in the comments. How do you see these patterns applying to today's geopolitical risks?